of August, this Wednesday, 8/8/12, Wednesday. Joining me here in a minute, and I got to get my video. Sorry, Vinny. Joining me here in a minute for hour number one, we have Vinny Eastwood joining me from New Zealand. Right now we're experimenting. I think we're going to have this broadcast uploaded, hopefully, to YouTube later on. He's recording it via Skype. Hopefully my audio is good. We get thumbs up there.
And as you said, we're experimenting in a very heterosexual way.
That's right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to record the audio just like I normally do, and I'll rebroadcast that on YouTube. Vinny's going to record this and see if we can't get the video up on YouTube as well. So great program lineup here. Let me give you the rundown. First of all, if you're not in the chat, please go to wideawakenews.com. Click on the second tab. That'll take you into the chat room. The lineup for tonight is Vinny Eastwood, hour number one. Hour number two, I have two gentlemen joining us, Doug Newberry, as well as Woody O'Brien, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Doug Newberry has got a new program coming up I want to talk about, and I also want to cover some of the financial stuff going on, but that we'll save that for the second hour. All right, so I'm uploading a video right now. Matter of fact, it might even be posted, but the gist of what I want to talk to Vinny about is the absolute absurdity of the election cycle of so-called democracies that we live in, Vinny in New Zealand and us here in the good old America. And I mean, I just pulled a few headlines this morning that paints a brilliant illustration of the ridiculous nature of what we call our election process, what we call media, what we call truth in media, and what we call representative government. Because none of those things are true. I mean, those are all oxymoronical at this point, right? So here's headline number one. Market rally just set for bigger collapse. That's actually the most truthful thing I found today. I'm going to set that.
See, I wasn't sure. You said that it's oxymoronical. I think they've run all out of oxy and it's now just moronical.
It's just moronical. Well, here's the deal, Vinny. I mean, look, this is the picture I want to paint, and then get your take on it. It's weird seeing you and talking to you at the same time. That's never happened before in a totally heterosexual way. All right, so we have 100 million. This is story number one. We have the Weekly Standard, conservative think tank, whatever, conservative media. We have over 100 million now receiving federal welfare. That's article number one. We have one article after another where we have a Lake Oswego man assaulted for putting up an anti-Obama banner. We have a Fredona man cited for attacking yet another Obama supporter, or rather, an Obama protester. We have the exact same thing happening with the blue media, where they're out talking about how Mitt Romney has never paid a tax in his life, and he's going to, drive the cause for women's issues and women's rights back to the 1950s. And the stories go on and on like this. Bernanke says student loans won't cause a crisis. This has been Bernanke, same one said we won't lose value in housing across the country, and because it's never happened in history before. And here we sit, worse than the Great Depression as far as the fall in housing. The point is this. This is all, except for the crash about to occur story, this is all crap. It's all bogus. It's all meaningless. This isn't reality. This isn't news. This isn't some kind of campaign season where we're going to get some kind of real change. None of this stuff, none of it is the fault of one more than the other. Nor is any of this going to be fixed by one party over the other. They all brought us here. They're all playing this game now of left, right, middle. But that's all it is a game. Of course we have 100 million people on the food stamp welfare rolls in this country. We've spent trillions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars, rescuing an economy so the banks wouldn't have to realize a loss. We have to paper over an economy in order to pretend that we're in recovery. So we've seen trinkets over the last 5 years. We've created a situation where the government has ultimate power, ultimate control, and authority because they control the food that goes into people's mouths. Without them, without the government, 100 million people would have no income whatsoever. Of course we're going to have Ben Bernanke coming out saying that student debt isn't going to crash the economy because he wants more debt. The whole notion is more and more and more debt. See, what we've seen, and Vinny, I want to get your take now. What we've seen is the largest transfer of wealth on this planet in the history of mankind. We've went in this country from $8 trillion, $9 trillion in debt in 2007 to $16 trillion All of this money has went to rescue a financial industry that has crippled the world, crippled it, to the point where in Syria right now, I watched Charlie Rose last night, who actually I have some respect for. Charlie Rose interview the King of Jordan. It was a great interview. It was 2 hours long. Instead of watching the Olympics, I watched the King of Jordan give his take on what's going on in Syria. And he outright said it. The Arab Spring, all this revolt and controversy in the Middle East, North Africa, and around the world, and he at least called out the West for having pushback that isn't being reported, is caused by one thing: economic conditions. Economic condition of the planet is literally leading, right now, as Vinny and I are speaking, to death in the streets on this planet. This is what's occurred. So this garbage of Mitt Romney's going to create jobs in this country, or Barack Obama in his second term is going to go to bat for the people of this country. Get real. Wake up. Prepare now for what's coming. Because they forecast it. We can look around the world at other models. When they break down, we know what is coming. It isn't going to be help for the man on the street, for Jane and Joe Sixpack. It is going to be more of the exact same. And at the end of it, when it's time to let it just come apart, all they need to do is step away from the 100 million people who are on the government dole. Step away and let the security industrial complex that is planning to put 30,000 drones in the air in this country do what will come naturally. Put down insurrection. Vinny Eastwood. Of the Vinny Eastwood Show, by the way.
The VinnyEastwoodShow.com.
Yeah,
and this whole idea of welfare, it speaks to me of dependence. And I like what was his name? He died earlier, and he predicted 9/11. He was a big central figure of the Truth Movement. What's his name? Bill Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper. Yeah. He was killed.
And he said that socialists are basically like the kid who lives at home. They're perfectly happy to live at home and have daddy put a roof over their head and use daddy's car. But at the end of the day, you have to live by daddy's rules under daddy's roof. If you have to take out the garbage, you have to. If you can't go over to the next town to go to a party because he doesn't trust you that much with the car, you can't. So it restricts your freedoms by tempting you with an easy lifestyle, so long as there's certain parameters. And I don't think people are like that naturally. I think they get conditioned very much by everything that they go through in their life, through their education system, their pharmaceutical scumbaggery corporation, anything.
Yeah.
There's a whole myriad of ways through all senses that we experience the physical and the spiritual world with, that are specifically there to confuse us, make us angry.
Yeah.
For example, huge amounts of welfare, huge amounts of poverty, huge amounts of suppression of free speech, just Obama and the existence of him, just in general, just thought I'd throw that in there. That's something that will definitely anger you. Mitt Romney, tax increases, tax breaks for the rich, taking away basically, look at it like this. Here you are, you're a very poor person, and you have to work very hard, and you're not doing it under the table, you're doing it in traceable bank accounts so that we can figure out exactly how much money you're making, so that we can siphon off about half of it in order to pay the taxes and the government that you love so much that you voted for, the debt that they got you into. That's where all your money goes to, and there's no law that requires you to do it. And so instead of going, hey, I don't actually have to worry about the economy because I'm rich, I actually get paid everything that I'm worth, you instead wind up listening to Bernanke saying, oh, college loans are going to do. It's like, well, for goodness sake. Everybody's got a bachelor now, so what's a bachelor worth? A bachelor is worth nothing in a planet with only one woman. And believe me when I tell you, mate, that's what it's like in the job market out there for fresh Bachelor of Science students.
Yep.
I mean, why do you think a Bachelor of Science is known as BS? They're trying to tell you something.
Yeah,
also, speaking of distractions, and you know how people only know about New Zealand in the context of the Lord of the Rings? Well, there are five rings to distract them all right now.
The Olympics. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about this. They're like, what was it? The 17th of August. That's going to be the big day. That's when everything's going to go off. There's going to be nukes flying and everything.
Wait a minute. As far as like an attack or something?
Yeah, apparently there's some Rockefeller document that was declassified back in the day, in the early 90s or whatever, talking about there were 13,000 people that died at the London 2012 Olympics in the past tense, as if it already happened. And there's a number of other people talking about it. But again, the whole point about any type of scary intelligence agency type operation is that nowadays they can't just pull off something like 9/11 without heaps of people knowing about it first, because even 9/11 was predicted by a number of people, including Bill Cooper, as I mentioned before. And nowadays, it seems that we're capable of exposing a false flag well in advance. For instance, do you remember when Iran was visited by the Enterprise, the old school, about to be decommissioned aircraft carrier that was nuclear powered, into the Straits of Hormuz, right during the time when they were talking about taking defensive action and testing missiles and things of that nature?
I do.
And it starts spreading all over the internet. There's going to be such a false flag there. And then nothing happens. Now, it could mean nothing, although if you're trying to pull one over people, it kind of helps if they don't see it coming, you know?
Right.
So in essence, they might dream up these plans and it gets exposed ahead of time. So I think that if we continue to talk about openly predictions of false flags and things like that, not in the context of, be afraid and stay away and what have you, but just simply about projecting public awareness. It's kind of like how David Icke doesn't get assassinated, because everybody knows who David Icke is, and everybody will suss that something's up if he goes down.
Or even even you or I, Vinny. I mean, there's enough people that have heard your voice or my voice that if we vanish tomorrow, I mean, that would be very much viral very quickly. And you're right. And I wanted to bring up a story that kind of illustrates that. This is one shining positive example, I think, of alternative media, and I don't even mean the folks in alternative media. I'm talking the general individual going out and learning for themselves, investigating themselves. When they hear something, challenging it. That's the big key. Challenge what you hear so that you can find out the truth for yourself. And this has occurred in I think, record speed and record numbers over the last several years. But this story here, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see this yet. I pulled this from our friends over at the Activist Post. Department of Homeland Security orders a half-ton of high explosives, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in a nutshell, 700 pounds of high-grade ammonium nitrate has been purchased by the Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Safety Administration, in order under the guise of training.
Oh, come on! What are they going to do? They're just going to set up some. They're just going to set up some other poor farmer or something like that.
That's right. But listen, this is
some federal building.
This is the thing. This is the thing. Now, what McVeigh was accused of, when McVeigh was convicted of blowing up Oklahoma City, what he was accused of using was, I think, 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate. But the vehicle, the accelerant to explode this, is a much higher grade what the DHS has bought here. So in the nutshell, the report says that the 700 pounds is equivalent to the same type of device if used as a weapon that McVeigh used. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm reading from a news article. However,
what McVeigh allegedly used, and that doesn't count the other confirmed bombs that were planted in the building that actually were planted structurally to bring it down.
Right, and exactly, and how the columns.
i.e., they've got enough bomb to make a big stinky blast, and that's about it. Not really damage too much.
They say that they're using it in order to train dogs. Now, this is the power of self-realization, of understanding that not everything that is put into your head by the mainstream, by somebody in a suit, is necessarily true, and it could most definitely be agenda-driven propaganda.
It's the direct opposite most of the times. Okay, here's the thing: if they're wearing a suit, they're lying to you.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you hear this story, and you automatically you want to say, well, what on earth are they using 700 pounds of high explosive for? They say it's to train some canine units. Now, if you break it down, an ounce of this material would be more than enough for an animal to be trained with. There's enough to train 11,000 dogs all at the exact same moment. And the key to this is They want all of this delivered, the accelerant, as well as the explosive, by the 31st of August, 2012, which happens to be 4 days before the Democratic convention. So this kind of information no longer just passes by the wayside as being, irrelevant information. If something happened at this convention, if it involves some kind of explosive like this, there would certainly be too many people like you, Vinny, and me, and the folks at Activist Post, and all other kinds of folks in alternative media, and people in general who would just sit around and say, "This is crap. This is crap. How can we have these attacks one after the other, and we're spending all this money on security? There's something isn't right." So there is. Go ahead.
I think the only way they'd be able to pull it off is if they had a simultaneous raid and strike on the leaders of the movement, so that it was so basically if they tear the throat out directly all at the same time, right, it might be possible, but I don't think that's going to happen, because you wouldn't be able to wipe out all of talk radio pretty much in the sphere without even people who are unaware of the truth knowing about it, let alone all the fans and listeners who would go absolutely ape crap. Like, basically, have you ever seen a fortress or in a movie or something like that looks incredibly unassailable, and there's just really no way you can get at it without really losing a heck of a lot of ground, losing a lot of men?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That's the New World Order's challenge with us now, is because we've become so strong and so bold and so confident and so skilled in our publishing and speed and professionalism that their propaganda platform that used to maintain control of society virtually whole hog, ham and fist is now falling apart at the seams. In New Zealand, the communications minister that was appointed by the Prime Minister, John Key, who was a former Federal Reserve banker, by the way, and then became Prime Minister of New Zealand, ligged up like $40 million to be given by the New Zealand government to MediaWorks, New Zealand's largest private media company. And he also managed to rig up them to give the Prime Minister himself the Prime Minister's Hour on prime time radio,
right?
And a couple of times a year, as it turns out. And guess who used to be CEO of MediaWorks? The communications minister that John Key appointed.
Yeah,
Mr. Stephen Joyce. So it's all tied in. It's all connected.
Absolutely.
All media is controlled.
Absolutely.
I'm actually really sick, Charlie, of seeing a whole bunch of truthers say, "Oh man, I sent this to the local news network. They didn't get it." Frick the local news networks. We can build our own platforms. We don't need them anymore.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact.
It's like welfare, man. If you're going to these people, it's like you're asking for scraps from the king's table. We own this table. This is our world too. And nothing they have said over the past 50 years of corporate propaganda media has given me any suspicion that it is of any use to use mainstream media platforms to get the truth out. Make your own platforms. You can build an audience from nothing these days, with absolutely nothing. I interviewed a guy today who's walking around interviewing all these famous people about all these amazing subjects, and he's been doing it all with a tiny little tablet that he bought for like $100, and he's got a great YouTube channel with amazing videos all over it. You don't need anything anymore in order to beat these people and have better quality content, because whatever they're talking about is always irrelevant.
Yep.
Always.
You're 100% correct. In fact, you're doing yourself a disservice if you have information that you want to share and you're going to your local whatever affiliate or Alphabet News Network trying to suck up to them to get on their airwaves because they listen. You're doing yourself a disservice. You're marginalizing your message just by mixing it in with the fluff of the mainstream. You're right. You're far more effective to make a stand on your own, to reach out to people like you and get on your programs or start your own program, your own YouTube channel, and put the facts out there as you see them. You're far more effective, and studies actually prove this to be true, Vinny. I mean, in the United States, in 2010, it was finally the first time under 50% of the people surveyed no longer trusted the mainstream media. This has fallen even further now. So you have the majority of people who are still tuning into the mainstream, but see it for what it is. Infotainment. It isn't news. It's garbage, and it always has this little happy ending at the end. Well, people are getting tired of hearing, well, we're going to go in and we're going to provide this no-fly zone. We're going to send troops here. We're going to level sanctions there. We're going to give this bailout here, and it's all for your own good. We're not quite to the 1984 level where they can just say it's for your own good, and people will just go right along with it. So there is this awakening happening, even on every level, from people who just challenge what Shepard Smith has to say when it's on Fox News to people like us who outright, we know that it's a bad day for the economy because the stock market was up and everybody's talking it up. I know it's a good day for the economy when it falls. So you're right. There is all different kinds of levels, but if you have a message that you're interested in sharing, then you certainly you have a better chance of standing on your own than trying to suck up to mainstream.
Exactly, because the mainstream media are all competing against each other as well. Yeah. And what we do in the Truth Movement, we do basically the opposite of everything that they do. They censor the truth. We only talk about the truth.
That's right. Hold tight, Vinny. Hold tight. I didn't hear the bumper music, and we're into the break now, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the break. We'll be back in 5.5 minutes with Vinny Eastwood of the Vinny Eastwood program and more Wide Awake News Radio. 5.5 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It's still the 8th day of August, Wednesday, 2012. Vinny Eastwood of the Vinny Eastwood program or show? I always call it the...
Well, I have a lot of showmanship, so it's kind of the Vinny Eastwood show, and It's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, like V-I-N-N-Y, because I like to deny as well. And and Eastwood as in go ahead,
make my day. Make my day, mate. All right, well, Vinny, I always say program because when I say show, it makes me, Wide Awake News Radio is a program because when show reminds me of what I see on.
Look at it like this. Show reminds me of The Muppet Show. And if you listen to my show, you actually realize it's quite appropriate.
You have an awesome show, and you have for a long time, and it's a pleasure to have you back on here. And I know that you'll get me back. Where are you broadcasting at? Are you on Oracle?
No, AmericanFreedomRadio.com.
Okay.
It's set up by Danny Ramirez, old Navy guy, and really good character. He used to produce Alex Jones, and he gave Jason Burmis and Webster Tarpley their first shows. And I first got on.
I've talked to him several times in this journey, and he was great about extending an offer to even come over there if Rinse or something didn't work out, or if I had an opportunity to do more programming, and no, he was a great guy to talk to.
He's just such, you know how a lot of times in life you search for people who value talent and want to make sure that it has space to grow and whatever, and giving people opportunities when they've earned it. Somebody who's fair, somebody who's got experience, and somebody who knows what they're doing. And I feel really humbled to be on American Freedom Radio, considering he used to produce Alex Jones, and then he gives me a program, and I'd never had my own radio show before. I co-hosted with another host on American Freedom Radio for a short period of time before being given that time slot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I think it's like, it doesn't matter where you come from. I'm from New Zealand. Have you ever heard of a Truth or Talk radio show host from New Zealand?
Yeah, only one of them. His name is Vinny Eastwood.
You see? And that's what I noticed when I was here in New Zealand, is that there was nobody. There was nobody. And when you are the person who notices a problem, then you are the one with the onus to go out and try and change it. You're the one who figured it out. Oh, my God, holy cow. The boss is paying off the lawyer on dodgy deals. And he's making huge amounts of money and kicking out people from their own homes. Oh, well, I'll let somebody else do it.
Yeah. Well, isn't that truly the conundrum of waking up, regardless of what level you consider yourself to be awake? Once you've crossed that line where you realize that, man, you can't trust what you're being told. You can't trust these so-called representative parties, in our case, the Democrats, Republicans, once you cross that threshold, there's really no turning back. And man, I tell you, I've known a lot of people who wish they could have, and in some days it's been me, where you're like, you get battle fatigue. You're talking about this stuff all the time. And as the alternative movement grows, so does the request for, you get more interviews on other radio programs, more things to cover, more articles to write, more website stuff to do. And you really wish sometimes that somebody else was, doing this, and you didn't have to make this such a passionate endeavor. But it's impossible. You start to wake up, you start to peel back the layers, and you realize that there's nothing that you can do except move forward. Because if you truly believe what you're coming out here talking about, you can no longer stop talking about it, stop trying to affect real change, then you can stop breathing. Because if you do, you realize not only are you sold out to the system, you're living in a system that is doomed and that is intent is to enslave.
I had a conversation with a very drunk person one time, and he said to me, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist and chemtrails. Why do you even care? Why do you care? Why do you care?" It's just. I
wish you guys could see this. You guys watching on YouTube can see this, but he does an awesome drunk slurring impersonation.
I've had a lot of experience, and I said to him, "Why don't you care about the future of mankind?
Yeah.
Why don't you care about the future of humanity? Come on, think about it, man."
That's a great question.
What is more important in your life than your species' survival?
Yeah.
For instance, if you were trapped on a desert island with a very ugly woman, and she was alone, and you were the last two ones around because everybody had died from Rockefeller radiation poisoning. And
she'd skin then, wouldn't she?
Yeah. But for some strange reason, both of you aren't sterile, and you have to try and procreate to save the human race, don't you? You've at least got to try.
Make it a world.
No matter how. Yeah. Close your eyes or something, and just put your best foot.
Who's going to judge?
Yeah. And that's what I found is also really funny as well. You stand on the side of the street with a giant megaphone talking about chemtrails and other varying forms of scumbaggery and New World Order machinations. And there's these people who roll past in a car that basically this is the amount of political discourse they're allowed to interject. You're an idiot!
Well,
go get a job!
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, it is understandable when we get this kind of pushback. Now, you're a lot more public. You are the only one that I know of in New Zealand. There's probably more now since you've come on board. More people are starting to wake up and maybe partake in getting involved.
And I make sure to bring them on my show and stuff so that they get a little bit more out there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't say that I'm the only one full stop or anything like that. I'm saying I'm the only one with a full radio show program that's on 5 days a week, a #1 YouTube channel. In fact, the New Zealand Herald is like the New York Times of New Zealand newspapers, okay? Mm-hmm. And you know how the New York Times has a YouTube channel, it's got huge amounts of cred and lots of subscribers and all that. I just recently, and now I have more subscribers than the New Zealand Herald's YouTube channel, which was the last YouTube channel in New Zealand that actually reported news that had more subscribers than me.
That's incredible.
So I'm now the most subscribed New Zealand news channel, even bigger than all of the mainstream media, and within a few months, I'll be bigger than all of the mainstream media YouTube channels combined.
Yeah, now you're talking the New Zealand news, the channels, and it's not surprising, and here's why. It goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment. There are more and more people who absolutely refuse to believe what the mainstream has to say, and they're finding out it doesn't take very long to search the internet or the YouTube or any other social media to find out there's plenty of people out there talking about current events and talking about the scumbaggery, as you call. It doesn't take very many times tuning in to your channel or my channel for people to hit the subscribe button and decide, okay, I'm going to use this as a source of information because it doesn't sound like everything else. It's not being delivered by a paid plastic spokesman, and it's not always cheery. At the end of the story, after we kill a bunch of people, it doesn't end in a happy ending like every mainstream media outlet does. And, one prime example of that, and I've done the exact same thing you have, where I've looked at the subscription numbers of some of the alternative, and you look at sites such as CNN, for example. I actually think it's in the low tens of thousands of subscribers that they have. This is CNN, man. This is big. The first cable news network. You go over and you look at RT, and they're at 1 million. They have over 1 million subscribers. So it shows you what happens when you have somebody reporting the truth. It will eventually at least garner some attention.
Look at it this way. You can't package the truth. That's the unfortunate thing about it, because the truth is the truth is the truth.
Right.
Lies, on the other hand, you can change any detail you want in order to make it more digestible for people. But the problem is that when you're swallowing lies and lies and lies and lies, eventually you get some kind of cognitive indigestion, and it just doesn't sit right with you. And usually this involves a lot of verbal diarrhea.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and you start looking for something to cure you. And I think that lies and deception really do have an effect on the mind, incredibly similar to the effect a disease has on the body. And we are the cure.
I agree. And with time rapidly running out here, about 10 minutes left, I kind of wanted to get into do you see from New Zealand, I'm sure you do, you're awake and you're on the radio every day, the most frustrating thing I deal with right now, Vinny, is when I go to load my website in the morning with, try to aggregate some news to put on there and start seeing the stories, the pro-Obama versus the pro-Romney versus the pro-Republican versus the pro-Democrat. And it's shocking to me. We are talking about people who are waking up. And trust me, I know, some of these people who were dyed-in-the-wool neocons a few years ago were scratching their heads saying, wait a minute, both of these guys, both of these parties have brought us to where we're at. Both of them are on board with giving more bailouts to banks and giving more debt to the American people. So there is that number waking up, but the same old tried and true method, you talked about the New World Order and their castle that they're up against, which is truth. It's not going to stop them from trying the tried and true tactic of divide and conquer. And it's one of the most frustrating things I see right now, even in alternative media, is the divide and conquer rhetoric. You and I have had a conversation before where we spoke about like the Occupy movement. And when that was coming to be, there was a lot of people thinking it was a left agenda, just like the Tea Party was a right agenda. And I don't see it that way. And I see it as soon as you are make it easy for the powers that be to label you, either you're a Republican Tea Party member, or you're a Democrat, or a Republican Tea Party or Democrat Occupy member, then you've lost. You've lost. It's like giving all your information to the mainstream. It's lost. It's going to get wrapped in fluff, and it's going to become meaningless. Like I said, the number one frustration I'm having on this day is the notion that there's a left and a right, that the left-right paradigm, divide-conquer rhetoric, governed by crisis mentality, this must be destroyed, because if it's not...
I think that there is a left and a right mentality, except people haven't interpreted it right. For example, in the boxing ring, you get your left jab and your right hook, but both of your opponent's arms are a threat to you. And that's what people need to understand about the left and the right, that they are simply one of two punches that is definitely trying to struggle for the knockout blow. And you best duck and weave and float like a butterfly, and also...
Let's see if he's bobbing and weaving in New Zealand.
Yeah. We like to bob and weave in New Zealand because we also have lots of sheep, and apparently you do need to weave wool, and it comes out on these long strings called bobs. That's definitely. Anyway, I think that I'm sorry. What was your question again?
I don't even know. I don't even remember. I'm thinking.
Doesn't matter.
I'm boxing sheep in New Zealand. That's what I'm doing.
It's whether or not there's a left or a right.
Right.
Okay.
The division game of trying to divide and conquer.
I got an idea for you.
Go.
I got an idea for you. If the left or the right were actually correct, the argument would be over pretty freaking quickly, don't you think?
Absolutely.
The reason why there are so many long-standing arguments in science, politics, media, games, business, whatever, is because both sides of every major argument are always wrong. And if you stand up in the middle and tell the truth, both sides of that bench that are wrong will attack you.
That's
because
right.
They're really, really afraid of new ideas. They're really afraid of reality. They're really afraid of the fact that they just wasted a couple of years of their life and accomplished absolutely nothing good for humanity, and that they have to start again and learn their life from scratch. It's like you graduated high school and now suddenly the government takes away all of your privileges, all of those qualifications that you got, and sends you back to kindergarten. That's what it's like to understand that there is no longer a left and right paradigm.
So do you really think? I mean, do you think there's a stumbling block of pride, perhaps, where people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they don't want to
look at it this way. Have you ever heard of a pilot or a cop or anybody who is professional, who has like 45 years experience, stake their reputation on something so blindly and say that my opinion matters more than you because of such and such? Anybody who tells you that their opinion matters more than yours had better have some evidence to support that, and not just their opinion and a long track record of bullshit that they've done over their life.
Well, I agree. But in the case of a pilot, right, he's got, you could say he's got thousands of hours of the ability to fly, and he's proven himself. But in the case of the general sheeple, as we talk about, it is so evident, it is self-evident that there is no left or right, because like your boxing analogy, it's perfect. There's a left hook and a right hook, and in the middle is you. As soon as you stand up and challenge, the self-evident nature of it is, look at your world. The guy who yelled at you for being on the corner, get a job. The guy who's talking to you, sitting on a pub, drinking a pint, saying, "Are you a conspiracy theorist?" The onerous is the proof is in the ability for them to prove to you that it isn't corrupt is far more difficult than the ability for you to prove that it is corrupt. Look around you. Look around the world. That makes sense?
It really does. And the thing is, when you're in New Zealand and when you're in the United States, when you're in Canada, basically, if you're in an English-speaking country and you speak to anybody about any that's going on, you can rest assured 100% of the time, the exact same type of lies, manipulations, or programs will be going on in your country. For instance, we had a big round of terror raids in New Zealand back in October 4th, 2008, I think, and a whole bunch of people who were trying to protect themselves and, do the right thing and whatever, but were branded as terrorists. And that happened in 84 countries simultaneously.
Yeah. Ironic, isn't it? We had one on the program here.
Wait. I don't think 84 countries. Maybe like 8 countries. Sorry.
No. There was a push around the same time. I don't know if it was all in the exact same minute if they synchronized watches and went for it. But there was a push for this national movement to go after potential terrorists globally. And Karen Tostato's in the chat room. She's going to kill me because I can't remember the gentleman's name. Wake News is his website. He came on. Detlef, yes, thank you. Detlef came on and told us about how in Switzerland, had a warrant for him in Switzerland, and it was served and prosecuted.
And executed. And you know what they call a Swiss SWAT team? They call them a SWAT team. and I guess they bust in all the doors of your house simultaneously because they've got synchronized swatches.
You're a sick man, Vinny. That's funny though. That's a good time.
I'm very sick, and laughter is the cure, man.
Well, you're right. It is good once in a while to laugh about it, because if you don't, you truly could go crazy. And again, it brings me to the point of there is days where everybody has in this genre, listeners of our programs readers of our articles, watchers of our websites, everybody goes through days where they want to turn it off. And you know what? You should do that once in a while. Turn it off, regroup, but then get back in the fight.
Yeah, exactly. I took a couple of weeks off recently from doing the show. I did not answer emails. I did not answer Skype messages. Nothing else. And I felt great.
Tell me when I can your program, because I got the music playing in my ear. Tell me when I can hear the Eastwood show.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say one last thing. It's much easier to lie down and die than it is to stand up and fight, but it's much more rewarding to stand up and fight.
I agree 100%. When can I hear the Vinny Eastwood program?
5 till 7 Central, which is 6 to 8 Eastern Standard Time, which is 3 to 5 Pacific Time. And if you're in the Uber Kingdom, the UK, I like to call it, you can also listen in about 11 o'clock till 1 a.m. local time, and it's on 5 days a week. VinnyEastwoodShow.com and AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Thanks, Charlie.
Vinny Eastwood, thank you very much. I appreciate you getting on. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to have Woody O'Brien and Doug Newberry joining us here in about 10 minutes. We'll be right back.
Plays an essential role in destroying viruses, bacteria.
It is still the 8th day of August, Wednesday, and right now joining us, we're going to have a couple who introduced me to both of these guys, and I think they're both great, and I have them both with us. We have Doug Newberry as well as Woody O'Brien. Now, in the first hour, in fact, it's up running now, a bunch of you already seen it and commented on it, but it had everything to do with divide and conquer rhetoric. I believe they're going to have some great insights on what the political season is bringing, what the financial markets are doing, what they're about to be, is going to be the only way that the power elite, the powers that be, the New World Order, continue to march on with their plan, which is to go ahead and issue more debt around the world, issue more wars around the world, and do it all in the name of spreading whatever, democracy, spreading recovery through the fluff, and we break through the propaganda. We see that it for exactly what it is. The arguments of the day are meant to do one thing, and that's take you down a path that leads you away from truth. Get this out now because I'm noticing that our feed is cutting out about every 5 seconds or so. We ran into this before we get too much deeper into the programming. Anyway, we're going to drive on. I'll record it, and I'll cut out. Can't get a good, clean feed out tonight. Doug Newberry, Woody O'Brien, welcome, gentlemen.
Great to be with you.
Hey, how you doing?
Heard your story before.
Well, I've just retired in May from 33 years as a broker. That it just got to the point where I couldn't stand to work in it another day, and now I just work as a consultant and in newsletter services, and I do consulting by the hour for $100 an hour.
That sounds pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Actually, it used to be 200, but the economy's so bad, and I'm already rich, so I figured I'd cut the prices to keep busy.
You're giving a discount.
That's the Laffer curve. I have 8 hours a day. I have to have something to do.
And I know you're a broker, but you're being really modest because your education is right up there with some of these top.
I'm literally a teenager and running 4 different businesses when I was 12 years old. So I have a lot of practice that we call financial markets and watching, basically where we're at now, which is a currency that tonight on mainstream ABC News, I don't know if Doug caught this, they actually mentioned how Obama is Romney's approval ratings are, and they actually said it's not like many people like either of these guys, which lends to what I've been saying for quite a while, that if it was Romney versus Obama versus none of the above, I think we're at the point where none of the above could win in a landslide.
Well, I agree with you, and we'll get more into that. But Doug, Doug Newberry, give us a little bit of your background for those of you, for those listening who have not heard you on here before or heard you elsewhere. What's your story, Doug?
Well, I'm sort of a political activist now, and I'm running a software company. We build software for retail investors, and that's how I started getting involved in, keeping an eye on the global Ponzi. And so, I see what's going on, and we try to help people profit from it. I mean, just because the global system, like he says, currency extinction event, just because we're living through that right now doesn't mean you can't trade a few shares of EBIX today for 5% real quick. So, while the financial markets are still functioning, we're in unprecedented times here as far as probably anyone alive knows about. Interesting, though, you were talking about the divide and conquer mentality and the whole left versus right, and got people talking about, gay marriage and chicken sandwiches because we don't want anybody talking about fake money and economic death spiral, right? So, right. What you're really talking about, though, is the marketing of slavery, because they're getting people to go along with this. People are falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. And one of these days, they'll bring you a global currency that they'll tell you is going to be backed by some basket of commodities or whatever. And, you give up your sovereignty, and then all is lost.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, make you beg for it, make you desire having this. And let's get into the first story. The first story that I told for tonight's program is over 100 million now receiving federal welfare. This is in all different forms. But, this is basically 33%, a third of this nation. And it's a statistic that I find very interesting. Not because the same reason the red team does. They want to take this and then bash Obama over the head with it so that they can get their guy Romney into the White House. But let's talk about this for a minute, because 100 million people on food stamp or on some form of welfare or another, there's a direct reason this has occurred. This is what has happened since we've tried to pretend we're in some kind of recovery, namely by spending $40,000 per second in deficit. We've done this full court press on Band-Aids and papering over and covering up this economy. So, of course, we're going to have extended unemployment benefits, welfare, food stamps, these kind of things being used to pretend that we're in recovery. But the true scare that behind this story is not the billions and billions of dollars that have went in to these welfare programs. It is the trillions of dollars that has been spent in the name of saving the banks. So we put these stories out talking about 100 million people in this country reliant on the government for income. Well, this is true, and it's a debacle and needs a cease and desist immediately. But what isn't covered is that both parties are to blame for it. The red and the blue team. Go ahead.
But Charlie, think about this for a second. It's not a million people who are dependent on the government for income. Flip it for a second. It's 100 million people who are dependent on the government for food. Welfare and public assistance is just a way for the government to weaponize food, because the one thing that we know is you can deny somebody electricity or cable or something like that, and they're not going to get violent, and you're not going to be able to control them with that. But if people need you to eat, okay, they'll do anything. They'll be your slave to the max if they're depending on you for food. And the more people for whom it is the government gives assistance, whether it's directly with food stamps or with money to buy food, we are weaponizing food. It's as simple as that, because once we have the majority of the population so dependent that they can't live another day without government food and water, that is literally the point where it's going to be easy to have some kind of an event that nobody will oppose, because they're not going to say no to their daddy who feeds them.
Okay, understand this, everybody listening right now. That's Woody O'Brien, 33 years as a professional trader, economist, and he's talking things that 4 or 5 years ago, right, you would have heard this and thought tinfoil hat. Weaponizing food. Not only in this same amount of time have we seen 100 million people swell the welfare rolls, but we've seen this transfer of fraudulent failure from big institutions onto the people of the world. We've seen the swell of sovereign debt around the planet. Ours has nearly doubled in about 5 years. And what Woody's talking about, I am in lockstep agreement on. You put in a control apparatus. We have the security industrial complex in place. They're ready to go. You put in a control mechanism. That mechanism is nothing happens in this economy unless it's from on high. And I'm not talking about your so-called representatives in Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the central banking cabal. They decide when an economy dies and when it lives. So when you want a very malleable populace, when you want to be able to control the people, simple. You can flick a switch, turn off the debit card, turn off the ability to attain basic necessity items of life, and you have people just begging for the cheese trucks to roll in or the FEMA camps to get set up or whatever the case may be. They'll be willing to hand over anything they have in order to make sure that little Johnny has enough Cheerios in his bowl. Doug, let's get your
People
take on it.
will even vote for socialism outright if it will feed their kids.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, make no mistake, they will. They've done it. They'll do it again.
And the more people you have that are dependent, by definition, you push in one side of the balloon and it comes out the other, the fewer people you have who are independent from government for their existence, which basically means with every person you get to be dependent, what you're doing is you're reducing the constituency that will defend freedom. You're reducing the constituency that cares about liberty. Because if you have a life that is independent from government regulation and control, you've got reason to be an advocate and to vote for democracy and for freedom. If you're basically, another piglet sucking at the teat of government, you've got no reason to be for Ron Paul. You've got no reason to be for sound money, because you're a part of the problem.
That's exactly
the thing. I'll tell you what the problem is. Charlie talked about, I call it the global Ponzi. He talked about sovereign debt. You can go out there on the street right now and walk up to 1,000 people and ask them, what is sovereign debt? They have no idea. They would not know what you're talking about.
That's a fact.
Because sovereign debt is an on-American Idol, and sovereign debt doesn't have a new hit album, and sovereign debt is not playing at your local theater. It ought to be, but it isn't.
Well, but think about how many people and reporters talk about derivatives, but if you ask them to explain what a derivative is, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, you're right. And in fact, you'd have people in the so-called media, I say so-called because we expect a certain degree of truth from the media, but even like Larry Kudlow coming out talking about the LIBOR scandal is a victimless crime. It doesn't hurt anybody, so it's not really that big of a deal. You talk about sovereign debt, and people, like Doug said, people cross their eyes and they get shiny glossed over, and they're like, who cares? Smarter people are figuring this out. But I keep seeing that there will come a point where all this is going to come home to roost, and what the average person on the lined up on the government teat or not doesn't realize is it's going to affect everybody. And this is everybody, regardless if you think you're in the know because your 401k or 401k has returned, to 2001 levels after being decimated in 2008. You think you're in the know because you know somebody that's an accountant, or you know somebody that's in the trade. I know Woody O'Brien, I know Doug Newberry, so I'm in the know, and they say that the stock market's at 13,000, that we got this all handled because the central banks are doing everything in their power to save and rescue the global economy. All of this is going to come to an end. So it's just a matter of not if, but when. And when that does occur, anybody who thinks they're in the know on what's coming, I think is truly naive. And it's really a reason why everybody should care. Sovereign debt is extremely important. It's extremely terrifying that we went from 8 to 16, going to go to 24. It's extremely important that we're spending $40,000 a second that we don't have. And it's extremely important that if we don't stop it, well, forget about stopping it. It's too late. If it's stopped now, let's end the first segment on this question for both of you. If the $40,000 a second deficit spending, if the $1.4 trillion a year deficit spending, if the expansion of debt, sovereign debt of this country, ended today because of a Ron Paul-esque administration or the power elite decided to pull the plug on it, what would this country look like inside of 6 months? I'll kick it to Woody first.
Well, I'm going to just say it depends on where you cut the budget at. If you cut the budget of millionaires and people who can afford their own stuff getting subsidies, and you get rid of 1,000 military bases overseas and all these wars, I think it's very possible to balance the budget without affecting the middle class or poor at all if you get rid of the Federal Reserve and replace the Federal Reserve System with debt-free money. I mean, I think it can be done in a painless way. But to me, the glimmer of hope here isn't a political reform like that. I don't think that's going to occur. The real glimmer of hope is Iceland. Iceland found a solution to this problem, which is they repudiated, they had a debt jubilee, and they started over. And the fact that you never hear about Iceland is proof that they found the right solution that the bankers of the world don't want people to know. It follows what I like to call the raw milk rule. If the government says I shouldn't drink raw milk, I probably should, because it must be good for me if they say it's bad. If we can't hear about Iceland, it's because they figured out the way to get out of this.
Okay.
They fired their politicians, chased the bankers out of the country, once that started over, and now their bonds trade on the open market like everyone else's.
That's right. And in fact, they've now hired private investigators to go after the bankers that helped.
Fled.
Yeah.
They're the first country to put a banker in jail.
Yeah. Besides the scapegoat Madoff. Iceland's prosecuting with a vigorous authority. I'll put it to both of them because I've made that argument since 2008. Look at Iceland, 5% unemployment. Look at Iceland. They're not straddled with the ongoing 19-meeting European debt crisis summits that are leading to nowhere other than evaporation of sovereignty and giving more power to central banks. Look at Iceland as an example, and I always get the same argument. Well, Charlie, that's 300,000 people. How can you compare that to a nation of 300 million or a planet of 7 billion? So Woody, broker for 33 years, economist, how do you compare a nation of 300,000 people to the rest of the world? How can that change work here?
The math is the same. It's entirely scalable. I mean, Doug and I talked the other day.
I call it a beta test.
Yeah, it really is. Doug and I talked the other day about how simple it would have been in 2008 or tomorrow, because it would still work for the government, instead of giving bailouts to banks, to give loans at 1% directly to homeowners with debt-free money. They would pay the money off to the banks. All the bad loans would go off the books. They wouldn't be at risk at them anymore. And you'd have people would have mortgage payments going from $2,500 to $600. That would be a huge boom for the economy. There's still things like that we can do, and it would still work. But that kind of solution isn't going to happen.
Go ahead.
The point is this. That's exactly right, Woody. Look, I wrote a white paper in September of 2008 that laid out 5 simple steps that we'd be living in economic nirvana right now if they had done it back then. And they didn't. And I even wrote in the white paper that they wouldn't. And even if they waited 3 years to do it, it would still work. Here's the thing. Look, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. All right. If I can figure it out.
Wait. I want to tell you this right now. I love your setup. Here's the thing. Look. You sound just like me. Here's the thing.
If I can figure it out, certainly some PhD egghead who's been working in monetary policy for 30 years can figure it out.
Institutions, the money center banks, they own the lint in Washington's belly button.
Yeah.
Okay? And they own the dirt under their toes. That's how you can have millions of people calling and saying, don't bail out the banks, and they'll have a trial vote, they'll vote no, and 2 days later they'll vote yes and say, oh, we had to because the banks threatened martial law.
They implemented it. I mean, they voted no in September of 2008, and we saw a 700-point slide.
Let me give you guys a couple talking points. Ready? The Federal Reserve Bank, a private corporation, has its own federal police force with state, city, and national authority over you. Now, are you a slave yet? I mean, that's it. This is a private corporation who has their own publicly sanctioned police force who can arrest, detain, and charge you. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, there's none of us that are more hopelessly enslaved, I think, as Jefferson said, as those who falsely believe it is that they're free. And the fact of the matter is the Federal Reserve is at the core of this system. They have to go because you either have to believe that they are dumber than a bag of hammers or the worst kind of criminals they are, and it's hard to say which is worse. There was a quote today where Bernanke said that the student loan problem is not that serious.
Yeah.
And I thought, why is anybody going to believe this guy? This is the guy who told us the subprime mortgage problem was well contained.
Yeah, and home prices have never fallen across the nation ever. It's not going to happen. It's going to keep going on forever and ever. Zero interest rate policy. And here we
I want to talk about that when we come back.
You got it. We'll touch on those topics and a few more. I do want to start with the loan, and then we'll get into, Doug, your topic. We're going to be back with Doug Newberry, as well as Woody O'Brien, and more Wide Awake News Radio in 5.5 minutes. Stay tuned. We're talking about food. We're talking about dieting. We're talking about elk meat, and we're talking about buffalo burger. And I'm completely off task now.
Well, I remember what we were talking about, and we were talking about. Here's the thing. Sure, we need a new sound monetary policy because this is all fake, and it's perception is reality until reality really sets in. But here's the thing. One of the things that make America the greatest country in the history of the world, right, are that in America, if you own a piece of property, you can borrow against that property. And it's that simple legal technical maneuver right there that has spawned literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of small businesses that have employed the great majority of American people and created the great middle class as we've known it today. Now, even in other countries where you can own property, you cannot mortgage that property, pull the money out to start a business. That's just not something that their law allows for. That's what's made America the economic engine unlike anybody's ever seen in this world. Now, here's the problem. Look at today's home equity position. 30% of American homeowners are underwater. They owe more on their house than it's worth. Where is the equity coming from to spawn the next 20,000 small businesses or 200,000 small businesses? This overlying debt problem that is just a burden on the American people. You can't solve your economic problems. You cannot create growth as long as the people are living under the oppression of debt that can never be repaid. You have to do something to change that. And when you do, you can start the economic engine that made America what it is today. And I'm no economist, but I'm Doug Newberry, and I support this message.
Yes, you can, 2012. All right, Woody, your take on that? I mean,
I'm going to disagree with Doug on one thing. I think if you have to borrow money to start a business, you should not do it. The best businesses are the ones that are started without the burden of debt, started on a shoestring, even if it's one person doing one thing and growing the earnings until it can be two people doing the same thing, until it can be four people. Debt is just a rope around your neck, and if you start a business based on debt or based on home equity, you're more likely to fail because it takes time to develop cash flow to be able to make a profit, to be able to pay loans
no
back.
question. I didn't say it was ideal. I just said that was the engine, like statistically speaking, that made us the country that we are.
Well, I agree that small business is absolutely the engine for job growth and job development. But that is the worst way to do anything. If you have to borrow money, it's a sign that you can't afford what it is that you want to do, and you should turn around and find a different way. But something, frankly, guys, we could solve all these problems in an Iceland kind of moment, or with a sound money kind of moment. And the truth is, we have in the offing an even bigger problem than the financial problems that the world is dealing with now. And that problem is simply start to grow food. We're all going to be much hungrier in our later years, and I'm going to be much thinner than planned.
No doubt about it. And in fact, that's a topic of a short video that you recently put out, and I just dropped it into the chat room. If you're listening to this on YouTube by chance, I'll put it down in the more information area. But you're 100% right, and it seems to be that not only is the ability to grow diminishing because of the more people growing, and you're right, all these billions of meals have to be served up every day. Not only are we running out of what seems to be the resource, and we just haven't really seen the effect of. We've seen rising food prices, yes, but there's a lot of people that think that the next big shock to the system isn't going to be $150 barrel oil. It's going to be out of control food prices.
And for the banks and the politicians, a skyrocketing food price that triggers a hyperinflation is the perfect excuse. They can get to blame the weather and say it's not them, it's not too much debt, it's not fiat money. It's that damn drought that's causing prices to go up in a hyperinflationary kind of way. And I think the part of this is people are not frightened enough, but they have to think about this idea that if there's 7 billion of us, that's 21 billion meals every single day. I mean, the world population, literally in the course of just 2 weeks or so, is eating every meal that's ever been served at McDonald's. And in a world of finite resources, it's not just we have a shortage of food, we have a dramatic shortage of the wrong kind of food. Most of the kinds of food it is that we're growing on this planet are grain-based. In America, we have a corn-based food chain that's awful. It kills people. It produces terrible food. There's not enough fruits. There's not enough vegetables. And most of the food that people are eating is full of pesticides and chemicals and preservatives that are eventually going to give them cancer.
Doug, you want to jump in on this? You're a chef.
Dude,
you're a 30-year chef.
I couldn't agree more. Not only are we facing a demographic time bomb with the lack of farmers, right? But even the food that they are producing is damn near toxic, right? And so between that and, the AMA controlling, big pharma and surgery instead of nutritional based outcomes, look, the food supply is just one unbelievable problem piled on top of another. And quite frankly, you wouldn't have a healthcare crisis if you'd fix the food. That's just simple logic. I mean, my God, figure it out, people. But here's the thing, dude, not only is that a big problem, think about the areas of the world that are just running out of water, right, like the American Southwest. I mean, dude, how do you get water down there when they're done? I mean, they just keep adding more people. People need water, and they just don't have any there. I mean, there are going to be some serious migrations that will take place over the next, 50 to 100 years.
Or maybe even sooner than that. I mean, if we look at the perfect storm that the three of us are laying out here, we have a financial storm that is, I believe, completely engineered and contrived and is going to be unleashed. Bernanke talking about don't worry about student loans. Well, you might as well come out and say don't worry about food because it's all going to hit the fan way before any of these issues come to fruition. Looking at with about the last 10 minutes to go, Doug, I do not want to forget to mention your radio program, so get in there with that when you can, your new endeavor. But in looking at the situation in the world, financially, militarily, expanding the empire, continuation of this alleged war on terror, looking at the food situation, which we just touched on, it seems that this is all culminating in a perfect storm. And I know it's kind of cliche. We've talked about it in alternative media for a long time. But I mean, what do you two see? I mean, you're in the trenches every day. I mean, we're wake up away, as we say in the military, 2 days in a wake up away from seeing a complete credit freeze in the current financial system. I believe it would be purposefully done in order to implement fear to get rid of sovereign governments, to give more power to the folks on high. But I mean, we're any trigger event away from cataclysm that most people just probably couldn't even fathom. I'm going to throw that to you.
Charlie, every single day somebody asks me when I think that this global collapse of financial systems and economies is going to occur. And my response is always the same. I'm surprised it didn't happen today. I am surprised every day at 4 o'clock when the New York Stock Exchange closes, and we've gotten through another day with the world economy on the edge of a cliff, and there is a very steady wind that could blow it into the abyss. The fact of the matter is none of us know what the triggering event will be or when it will occur, whether it'll be a controlled demolition or it'll just be some kind of accident. But the one thing that we know for sure is a collapse is unavoidable at this point. If the choices are Obama and Romney, there isn't 4 or 5 years for somebody else to follow one of these two and save us. We're going to be done way before then. We could be done tomorrow. We could be done on Christmas. We just don't know. But what we do know is that it is coming. And when it comes, the only question that will matter to people in their individual life is, are you ready? How prepared are you? How much have you been getting ready and getting your life ready for this event to occur? Because if you're 10% ready, you're dead already.
No doubt about it. And, I guess if I was going to go any deeper than that on the question is, do you see, you're surprised it hasn't happened already. Do you see the staging of Robomny or whatever, whoever we're going to get? It's irrelevant at this point. Do you see an October surprise in the markets? Do you see Europe falling apart? Give me the next 30 days.
I think there's always a window in the political schedule between the day after the election and Inauguration Day where things can hit the fan and they can go terrible, and the new guy gets to get in there, assuming it is a new guy, and he gets to make radical, horrible changes and say, oh, I had to do this because it's the old guy's fault. So there's going to be a window between Election Day and next spring where if there's going to be some controlled demolition of the system, that's the best time to do it, because then it's a whole nother 2 years before another election. And these politicians always think that's why we can screw people right after an election, because they won't remember the next time around. And that would be my best guess. I don't think we're going to make it to next spring without a cataclysm.
I would agree with that analysis, and maybe even a little before, because we could all come together and hold hands. Let's say it's going to be Obama, or I guess it really doesn't matter. We could all come together and hold hands on the heels of a dramatic cataclysmic event. Be it.
I don't think the elite have decided whether it's going to be Obama or Romney. They may need to do it before the election if they decide to throw Obama under the bus. Yeah. I still think the math favors Obama.
I do too.
Incumbency is very, very powerful, but who knows what the schedule and the timetable is? All that I do know is that I'm doing as much as I can to get ready myself and get enough other people disturbed that they're starting to get ready, even if they're like my crazy neighbor whose only preparation is 10,000 rolls of toilet paper. He thinks he'll be able to barter for whatever he needs with that toilet paper, and he's probably right. He'll probably survive. But for people who are doing nothing, you know what? You're dead already.
That's a
Let me
fact.
tell you what I think the best barter currency will be. Bic lighters. Dude, if you had like a couple of tubs, them big plastic tubs full of Bic lighters, man, Bic lighters are going to be the most invaluable resource that anyone can imagine. And I bet they'll draw a pretty penny down at the corner barter market.
You'll get 4 rolls of toilet paper for your Bic. Unfortunately, when you're amassing this Bic lighter empire, you're going to get flagged from DHS and Homeland Security as a potential Bic lighter terrorist threat. So you might be able to hoard.
I have to confess, I have a paint can full of Bic lighters, and it's Doug Newberry's thought, because the first time I heard him say that, I thought it was a great idea. And that weekend, I was at a flea market, and there was somebody there that had a paint can full of them, and most of them worked. So I have the Bic lighters for everybody.
There you go. Well, all right, Doug, we're rapidly run out. I want to get your take on looking at 60 days. Let's look out up to the election, past the election. Do you see a cataclysm coming, or are we just going to, as long as the lights and beer are flowing, we're just going to trudge along?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I agree with Woody. Every day I get up and I turn on the television, I turn on CNBC, because I want to know if the global financial system started melting down while I was asleep. because that's how close I think we are to the edge. I mean, it could happen any day. I'm also surprised it hasn't happened yet. However, I'll disagree with Woody a little bit because my business partner says never underestimate the power of the bankers to print enough money to bail themselves out. And, this is the reality in which we live. So we're going to find out eventually whether the forces of real market reality versus the forces of print and extend and pretend are more powerful. And my guess is that the actual forces of reality are more powerful than extend and pretend. In fact, have proven out to be over history 100 times. And so, but is it going to happen this year? Maybe. Is it going to happen next year? Maybe. Can they keep it floating for 15 more years? Because all the people out there are running around with a pocket.
I want to hear about your program, but I'm going to agree with Woody. It's from where I sit, from what I observe, from what I hear, from what it seems to be evident to me, the real campaign has just now begun. I still think Obama is going to he's going to hold out a victory. But listen, and this is what the topic of tonight's video was about. This is what the last couple of programs have been about. It's going to be the drawing of the line between the red and blue team is going to be something worse than we've ever seen, I believe, in our lifetimes. They're going to play this left-right, he said, she said, finger-pointing game all the way to November, and it's going to get heated in this country. Some of the stories I have up today at wideawakenews.com were, people hanging banners out saying, "I created this job, Obama," and being choked by blue teamers that walked by and were offended by it. This is going to be a divide and conquer political season, I believe, the likes of which we have never seen. Okay, we have about a minute left. Doug Newberry, tell us about your program. Go.
Upcoming, we're going to launch a new show on the Oracle Network, and you'll just have to stay tuned for details.
That was okay. I can let 5 seconds for that, Doug. I didn't need to
All
leave a
right.
minute.
Well, we're going to talk reality, right? It's all about reality, and the reality is, the food is making people sick. The doctors are killing.
And a friend of the program and fellow alternative media guy, Doug Owen, set that up. He was looking for some talent to come over there, and I mentioned Doug Newberry, and those guys seem to have really put together a plan. So I'm excited to get your program to hear it going over there. I do want to commend Woody O'Brien. I want to commend both of you guys for coming on, taking time late where you're at to come on here and share your experience with us. But I want to commend Woody. For those of you who don't know and seen his videos, he looks like a big guy. He's huge. He's 6'6", 300 pounds. But he was 6'6" and 365 pounds. He's living up to his words. He's getting ready for what's coming by doing the right thing and taking care of his health first and foremost. Woody O'Brien, thank you very much. Doug Newberry, thank you very much.
Always good to be with you, Charlie.
All right,
Anytime
guys.
you need me.